Sue DeCurtis? Sue?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you.
Hi.
We have the whole committee, including our alternate, and Fiona and Ellen, and several others. Anyone else from the? Armand, there's Armand, yeah. Anyone else from the school board on? Committee member Gellermino is here also, as well as others who can be noted through their physical or video presence. I'd like a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Susan. Okay. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Agenda is approved. Approval of minutes. Now, I noticed one mistake on the minutes. It's a minor mistake, easy to miss. Andrew Deacon's name is misspelled. That's the only thing I found. Looking for a motion to approve these minutes. With that correction, and maybe others that'll be brought up.
I was not present at this meeting.
Yes, you were. It says roll call. Mr. Kisco, Ms. Richardson, Mr. Trius.
Indeed, it does say that.
Yeah, weren't you here?
Oh,
No,
you were
I
at the
wasn't.
beach, that's right.
You were escaped.
I watched the meeting after the fact,
Okay.
but I was not present.
See, just
Although I
assume you were here
appreciate
because you
being,
always
You
are.
know, being counted in.
Okay. Anyone else notice anything else? Motion to approve these minutes? Do we have that? Yeah, I got that, didn't I?
So moved.
I'll say second, then we're all set.
Sure, I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor? Minutes are approved. Discussion, public participation. Anyone from the public wish to speak? No one wishes to speak. Discussion and next steps. So we have the Torrington and Vogel-Wetmore Schools school improvement plans. Who wants to go first?
We're actually gonna go kind of collaboratively because,
That's fine.
you know, I call Forbes my sister school, but Vogel-Wetmore's my twin. So we work closely together, being the only two K-3 schools in the district. So we have to be aligned regularly, so we meet and talk regularly. So our plans are very similar. So are we ready to begin?
Anytime.
Okay, great. I want to thank you guys for this opportunity to share the plan with the board. This is my, I think, 7th year in Torrington. It's the first time presenting a school improvement plan. So I think that's a step in the right direction to righting our ship. And I think it's a great process for us to get used to and become a regular practice. So thank you. This plan is aligned to the district plan that you guys saw a few months back. And is also, like I said, collaborative with Vogel-Wetmore. We worked also closely with the Office of Teaching and Learning when creating the plan so that it is aligned throughout the district. And we also worked with our building level teams, myself, the leadership team in our building, to make sure that the plan met the needs of pretty much all of our stakeholders. Since the redistricting, we closely match in demographics and size. So you'll see that when you look at the demographics on the 3rd page. So since the redistricting, I think, which was the sort of goal of the redistricting.
I just added, if you're looking at my side by side, I believe the EL and the special ed numbers might be missing, and mine is 15 for EL and 16 for students with disabilities.
The copy that I printed out had them included.
Oh, they did.
Yeah,
Okay.
The ones that
Great.
went
Excellent.
out didn't. but
Correct.
these do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
So as you can see, our demographics are similar and are changing from what they were probably from a few years back. But I think that's a good thing. I think we're at a point where we can work collaboratively with the same type of students, the same demographics, and leverage that for our students. If you want to take a second to kind of look at the demographics and the data pages, something to note, just as not being in education, Dibble's assessment is an assessment of acquisition of early literacy skills. So you'll see that as what we're using is our assessment data for kindergarten through grade 3 in language arts. And then our STAR is an adaptive test of literacy and numeracy skills. They are both universal screeners, and they both provide growth reports. So our staff is becoming proficient, and we've built their capacity in utilizing these reports to plan for students. So we look at this data regularly as a staff, and these are assessments given 3 times a year. Something else to note, pre-COVID, both Torrington and Vogel Wetmore were recognized as schools of distinction because when we switched to sister schools, our measures for next generation accountability changed, things that were measured against to create our score. So therefore our school accountability indexes increased from the year we were K5 to the year we were K3, bringing us from a number 3 to a number 2, 1 being the highest in recognized schools. We have 3 goals that we're focused on this year: engaging instruction, continuum of support, and family engagement. Those are our 3 priority goals based on the data that you're looking at. The pandemic has sort of forced us to work more collaboratively than we ever have before and to reimagine how we're doing business. So that has had some really unintended positive outcomes. We're looking at the practices that we do and kind of figuring out now at this point, a little over a year later, what are the practices that we've started because of the pandemic that we'd like to keep that have actually improved and accelerated our learning and allowed us to work better together? And what are some of the practices we need to modify and change to meet the needs of our students at their developmentally appropriate level? So that's kind of what you'll see throughout the plan. I'm going to talk to you about priority goal number 1, engaging instruction. Looking at student data, you'll notice, and this is not unique to K3, I believe it's been throughout K12, Tier 1 instruction is something we are focused on, improving and meeting the needs of students. We literally have what you would call an upside down triangle. So that typically means that something is wrong with that Tier 1 instruction, something needs to change. So we really drilled down into our data and looked at our practices. We've done walkthroughs. We've met with our leadership team to figure out what are the areas that need to be strengthened. Some of the action steps I'd like to highlight for you are that we are being intentional, targeted, and student-centered through all of these. First, our student-centered coaching cycles. We started at Torrington with kindergarten. Because we only have 1 coach, we're about halfway through 1st grade. But each teacher has met with the coach, worked together to collaboratively plan, look at student data to inform their instruction, specifically in the area of phonics, because that is an area of weakness if you look back at the DIBELS data. In addition, we've been using things like our DataWise protocol and data meetings. Another sort of wonderful thing that's come out of this Half Day Wednesday is that we get to meet regularly. So we meet as grade level teams. At the beginning of the year, we were meeting cross district. So that allowed us to really plan and be very aligned. Be aligned with our pacing, be aligned with our assessment schedule, be aligned with what students were seeing in their slideshows, and what they were experiencing in class. And that is better than it's ever been, even pre-COVID. So before, when we didn't have to work collaboratively across the district, it was kind of each classroom had their own thing going on. Now they're all sharing the work. So to create slides, to create lesson planning, each teacher really works together with the rest of the entire team, sometimes 16, 18 teachers, to plan and work together so that they're aligned and doing similar things. Not the same thing, because everybody can have their own sort of unique spin on things, but same, so that we have that guaranteed curriculum. And that is something we want to continue post sort of pandemic, hopefully post soon. And so that we can continue to have these collaborative grade level meetings. We continue to look at student data to inform our instructional practices and be intentional. So that is something we look forward to continuing. which brings us to some other action steps, really looking at our schedule and planning to maximize our instructional minutes, to provide the right amount of time to allow for that win block, what I need now, which is really an intervention block for students. And provide that common planning time, which is difficult to do in a regular schedule, but we're working right now together to kind of plan for that for next year. We're also monitoring the implementation of several new resources that were purchased as a result of our data. Things like Flyleaf, Freckle, Foundations, and Heggerty all address some of our literacy weaknesses. So areas that we've found that there are holes in the curriculum or in our student outcomes, we've purchased these products to help us with that. We're working on training staff and how to utilize these and really building them as non-negotiables into the schedule. Let me see what else do I wanna highlight. We are infusing technology into lessons. You'll be amazed at what 5-year-olds can do, right? They, another unintended wonderful outcome is that our students are proficient. We never had STAR for kindergarten and first grade because we thought, geez, doing a computer-based adaptive test as a 5-year-old would be impossible, but now it really wouldn't. They're quite skilled, probably better than we are, at utilizing some of these things. So it's obviously not appropriate to have a 5-year-old on a computer for 7 hours either. So again, we're looking at what are the things that we want to go forward with next year that are appropriate. Are there the online platforms appropriate? Is there an online assessment that would be faster than a one-to-one teacher assessment? So really taking a look at what practices have helped us grow and what practices we need to get rid of and go back to what we used to do or some modification of that. Anything you want to add about priority goal?
No, I think there's I'm going to talk about our second goal, and there's really a lot of crossover between the two. So I'm going to just jump right into that if you don't mind, especially the portion that you talked about with win block. Really the three things in this goal I want to talk about are our MTSS, which is our, let me back up a second because Kelly thanked you and I didn't. And I just want to echo what she was saying about that, just to be here, to be able to share this work. To know that you're invested with us in this, that it's really straight down the line, from the Board of Ed down to our children and our families, with working closely with our central office staff on all this. How many times, Sue and Maureen and Andrew, did we discuss all these goals to not just align with each other, but to make sure that all of us K-12 are really aligned with where it is that we want our students to go. So thank you for the opportunity to be here. But really where this, where Kelly's talking about really kind of more about what happens every day in the classrooms, our regular curriculum, where we're going. Our next goal, which is again shared, is more about that support that we may offer either in the regular classroom, outside the regular classroom, and how that would come about. And some of it is the same things that Kelly was talking about. So our data meetings, for example, that we have really just about every Wednesday, we're meeting to talk about data. We have been working really hard on ways that we can continue that work next year, and making sure that going forward, that our data meetings and our data are really well aligned with each other, so that we come to a meeting knowing when we meet on April the 7th, we're going to have Dibble's data ready to go, K1. It'll be fresh, it'll be accurate, and we'll be able to talk about that and talk about the work that Kelly was talking about, but then also talking about kind of those next steps. So what to do if a classroom is struggling, what to do if a grade level is struggling, what to do if particular groups of students are struggling, and finding out exactly where it is they're struggling. So our MTSS is our multi-tiered systems of supports. I'm just getting used to new lenses in my eyes, so forgive me for the glasses on and off. It's hard getting old. But there's
To tell us.
It's great, do it. So the tier 1 support is really what we were talking about in the classroom, really what Kelly was getting at, what the teachers do every day, our basic curriculum, what most of our kids theoretically need. So that upside down triangle is, kind of relates in there, where maybe it's few of our kids that need that, but the goal is that most of the kids will need that regular tier 1 level of support. During these meeting times, when our SST meetings, which I'll talk about in a second, we will get together, look at that data, discussing where individual students, small groups of students within a classroom are needing a different level of support or a different level of focus. So working with teachers in the classroom that can provide that perhaps with 2, 3, 4 students in a group them by the need, target that instruction, and begin that work right in the classroom. Once in a while, even working with one student to really kind of target it in. Also, sometimes taking that data and really changing where their instruction was going, backing up a little bit, moving forward a little bit, just to make sure that we're not letting anybody fall behind. And then the next level would be that tier 3 work, which could be one-to-one, very small groups of students. That's that intense, targeted individual goals for students. So students that are struggling with reading as a large area, math as a large area, finding out what exactly is it that they are struggling with so that we can focus in, laser focus in and really drill the student with that. It's a bad choice of words, but really making sure that we can shore that up at the level they need in order to get them back up those tiers, because we want them all to end up, back at that tier 1 and being ready to learn with their peers. So that's kind of how that MTSS piece works. Kelly was talking about our WIN groups, which are what I need now groups. In regular times and in future times, I hope, we'll be mixing those groups among classes. So some students from this class, some students from that class, and from wherever, they all need work on a specific area. Sometimes it's math, sometimes it's reading, sometimes it's social emotional, it might be behavioral, that we would group those students. A teacher who has an area of passion or an area of strength would be the ones that would be meeting with those students to help shore up those areas. And then there would be other students within those WIN groups that don't need that level of support, and they can take on something additional. Explore a topic of interest of the students, work on some more challenging math problems, develop work on a love of poetry that they have, those kind of things. So it really can kind of hit both ends of the scale with our WIN groups. This year, right now, we're really not able to do that mixing between cohorts. No, I shouldn't say that. We are not able to do that mixing between cohorts. We just can't do that, thanks to our friend, the coronavirus. So really what we've been doing is again, the work that Kelly was talking about on Wednesdays, where we're really digging into that data, and we've been really focusing on literacy and what is it that we can do for students, mostly across a grade level. Once in a while, it's a particular class that needs something a little different, but not very often. And how can we do that intense work during our WIN time? Sometimes that's also a time where special education teachers might push in and do some of their work. Our ELL folks might push in and support certain students during that time. But generally, this is the time where we're going to continue to look for what does that class, what does that grade level need, so we can continue to flip that triangle back the way it goes. We also, in this area, we have our student support teams, our SST work, where we'll have meetings with teachers. Depending on what the student needs, it may sound similar, but really this is where a teacher will come out, meet with a small group of folks, whether it's an administrator, a special education teacher, some of our behavior specialists, depending on what the need is of that student. They'll share with us the work that they've been doing in their classroom, whether it's tier 1 work, tier 2 work that they've been doing with this, usually one particular student, and what challenges that they're having. So this gives us opportunities not only to brainstorm together with that teacher to come up with ideas and ways that they can really tackle whatever the need is for that one student, also allows us to really support that teacher to help give them some new ways of thinking, maybe expand their knowledge of teaching whatever it is that it might be, especially with a student that's struggling. It's been very helpful with the same area, with the language arts, with the phonemic awareness area, but it's also those outlying kids that maybe their behavior is the teacher's just not able to kind of get them in line to stay in the classroom, to stay in the seat, to really be available for learning. And we can help them with either some techniques, some things that they can do, token boards, whatever kinds of things that they can do to help motivate that child to not just stay in the classroom, but to learn. And then sometimes that can also expand to, here's some other people that can help support you in this area in your classroom, support that student. So those are really the 3 areas that, that I wanted to talk about from this section. You can, looking through it, seeing there's a lot more, but I thought those would be the areas to really kind of focus on. another thing that I want to point out with this plan, that right now we have this plan, some of it's kind of starting now, and where exactly the time frame is a little bit fluid. And I would like to see this, depending on where our data goes, to seeing us be able to make adjustments to our plan as we kind of go along. So as you read through, you can kind of see where there's areas that already allow for that. But there may be more, as we go forward, if we find other areas of need, or hopefully other, some of the areas that are on there that we've already fixed, that we can move on to work on some other things. So I'm going to jump right into the priority goal number 3, and this is an area where I think Kelly will probably jump in a minute to talk about some of the things that she wants to do, or is doing in her school, is our family engagement section. So as you can imagine, in some ways, in most ways, family engagement is a lot harder when you can't have families coming into your school. So traditionally, the things that we love to do, we love to have PTO meetings, we like to have harvest festivals, we like to have dances, we like to have, all of our great, wonderful events where we have kids and and they come with their families, and, mom or dad are there with them. And we have really the huge range. I imagine it's the same at Torrington, but the huge range of families that we normally have trouble pulling in. They come to all of those fun events because their kids come home and they say, I want to go. And, they're not coming without mom or dad or grandma or a big sister or whoever it is. And it really gives us an opportunity to see those families. So that, of course, will all be back as soon as whoever gets to say we get to do that again says we can. It will be happening. But in the meantime, we still have some great ways to reach out to our families. So we have regular communication. Our office, if it hasn't broken yet, Allie, I don't know if you've had to fix it, but the message system that we use to send out messages to our family, how we haven't worn that out yet, I don't know. The amount of messaging that is coming out of our families, even things that we never had to think about before, like tomorrow's going to be a remote day. It's 8 o'clock at night. We have to get those messages out and make sure that families remember that you're not just staying home. You've got to get on your computer and you've got to get learning. So it's, all of those kind of messages. And Wednesday, I think every week we send out a message that reminds families that Wednesday's an early closing. Make sure you've arranged to meet your students. All of those kind of nuts and bolts kind of things. We also send home we're trying really hard to find ways to do fun events. So like we had our Veterans Day parade, which made the news. I'm very proud of that. So it was just such a great event that we were outside, we were there, we had families coming by. But we also do other smaller things. We had in the presentation that we had a couple of pictures that we were going to share.
Yeah, Ellie's splicing them in.
She's splicing them in, of
Yeah.
course. She's probably already done. So there's one, I think there it is. There's that might be the one with Sue reading to a class of students on our Read Across America night. So we were, pulling in the kids is easy because they're there either on the computer or there in person. But ways that we can pull in parents are things like that, where we read some stories over a Zoom meeting. I'm probably doing too much talking, so I'll try to kind of cut back a little bit. But that regular communication, our Google Classroom has become a great hub of communication. I never would have predicted, but teachers can get messages across. If I need to get a message to students, I can zip it out to teachers, and 5 minutes later, it's out. And at K3, all of the parents are on there. Many of the parents are on there looking at it. Newsletters, our TPS magazine, which I think is coming out soon, that Tim Gaffney has been working on. Conference times, which who would have guessed a year ago that we would have been Zooming conferences. Our kindergarten orientation, our kindergarten readiness night, readiness fair, where we were all available online for parents that wanted to come and ask questions and kind of meet us. And so we'll have more ways to do that, especially as we're welcoming in our new families. So you want to add to that?
Yeah, I wanted to mention that, again, sort of the unintended silver lining is we have literally been in our families' living rooms, and they have been in the classroom watching the teachers teach all year. And so we actually are probably closer with our families now than we ever have been. This pandemic has really taught us that relationships matter. And if you put the work into the relationships, they will grow. We've met with kids and tried to get 5-year-olds independent on Chromebooks and Google Classroom and submitting their slides because they're home with grandpa who doesn't know how. and may not speak English, and mom's off working her second job or sleeping during the day because she works at nights. So those kind of relationships where we're really working to support families and help them get through whatever the challenges are in their way this year have really sort of helped us be closer than we ever have been. And we want to continue that even when the pandemic is over. We want to continue really having a close relationship with families and being partners in student success. So some of the action steps that you see sort of outline that partnership. Our attendance team meets weekly. We look at the attendance data. We look at disengaged student reports. We do home visits. We each have a grade level where we call students who have newly become chronically absent or on the verge to being at risk. So that has really helped families understand that we're here for you. If there's something in your way, we find out transportation is an issue. We offered to some families, that there was a family who the Wednesdays didn't work for them. They couldn't get a ride or pick up the kid off the bus on Wednesdays. So that child may work remote only on Wednesdays because they just didn't have transportation. So those attendance meetings really help us uncover what the barriers are and help families really get through this year.
Thank you. That was the other item I was going to talk about, is our attendance. And the amount of work that we've done on our attendance work matches really what you're talking about. It's been quite a struggle to make sure we get as many kids either online or in school as possible. We've been working hard on that.
And the work pays off. When we meet with families, we even on district cell phones texting families, is everything okay? Do you need our help? I noticed that you're not here this morning, and all of a sudden 15 minutes later, they're dropping them off. So really staying on families and staying closely related to what their needs are has helped. And I think that's going to continue to help having those positive relationships. Other things I really want to make sure I highlight is our parent-teacher organization, even though we've been remote and hybrid and they haven't been really allowed in the building, they've been phenomenal in continuing to provide enriching experiences like the bingo night. We do weekly read alouds, just opportunities for kids to be kids, even though they're not in person. And sometimes those virtual opportunities actually have better outcomes, better attendance than what we would if we had it at our school. We had a story night early on and it had 160 kids show up.
We've had
So-
that same result with board meetings, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so like some things we may not, some things we may keep, right? Virtual parent conferences might actually be a great thing because parents have kids in 4 buildings and I can't drive from Forbes to Torrington in enough time to get to that. So some of these things are actually going to be
And
things I'm sure we continue.
I'm working, but I can take a 15-minute break and do a conference. Like
Right.
all of those things that are possible through that platform.
Right, and then the last thing I just wanted to make sure we mentioned is I know the district has their diversity committee, and as Forbes had started one earlier on in the summer, and at Torrington, we're looking forward to doing that. Once the district committee has a vision and mission and goals, we'd like to align to that as a school-based committee.
Yeah. And we'll certainly be following those footsteps as well. But I wanted to just make sure to take a minute to thank our assistant principals, Georgia Austin and
They
Alden
do all the
Pegg,
work,
who,
we just
yeah,
don't
they've been working really hard to make sure. And I don't think I'd ever call them shy. I don't know why they're being shy tonight. But never a
told
word
them
I
they
would
could
use
beat
to
Van on
describe-
that.
Yes, we promised that we do all the talking, but I didn't want to not thank them for all the hard work on this too.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple of questions and then we'll see if
Yes.
anyone else on the committee does. You talked an awful lot about data. Is this data we mine from things we're already doing, or is some of this specific to being able to make the decisions you're thinking of, talking about?
Well, generally, it's data that we already have. We haven't created new sets of data. So the what you're looking at right on here, the doubles data, the star
Yeah.
data, generally, we may look at. It also depends on what where we're focusing. If we're doing a meeting about a specific student, we may be including some other work that they're doing, behavior data, things like that we collect, anecdotal data, all sorts of things. But generally, the data that we talk about are our standard district-wide data that we all use.
I will say, though, we are working to build our capacity embedded formative data. We often look at these kind of 3 times a year pieces of data and go, oh, geez, that stinks. So now we're trying really to look at data in the moment, data within the lesson to inform how we're going to teach the next day. And so that's kind of been the focus of our grade level data meeting.
And sometimes, especially when we get to that level, that tier 3 work that we're doing with students, they have their individual goals that we'll be setting with them. And then that may be data that we bring. What kind of progress are they making along along with that.
Okay, so that would be individual data as opposed to group data.
Sometimes.
Okay. My other question is, we have on the second sheet, the targets, 80%. 80% of what?
80% of students would be amazing.
Well, I mean, what I'm familiar with is the preschool kindergarten readiness standards that Head Start and Early Head Start use.
Mhm.
And they have numbers and everything, and that's all observation of the teachers, but
So what you're looking at here, the actual is
Right.
actual number of students in kindergarten in the fall and in the winter that were proficient according to the DIBELS measure of proficiency on that assessment. We would love for 80% of our students, which would mean 80% are tier 1, all need similar things. We're nowhere near that right now.
okay.
Ideally, we want that to be 100%. Of course. 80% is our target right now.
Okay, well, those were my questions. Anyone have,
I have a question.
okay, Jess first and then Ellen, please.
How do you think, because I'm assuming some of your students were full remote when these assessments were given,
Mhm.
do you feel like that impacted these numbers in any way? Like,
In
what's your
many
gut on
ways.
that? Yeah.
In many ways. So it's really impossible for me to say which direction it impacted because it could be both.
Right.
There were remote students, and actually we're at a point now, I think both of us, where we're really, our remote numbers are dwindling. I just opened a new kindergarten last week. So that, I think we may see a change in the spring because we have fewer remote students. But there's really no way, because there's so many factors, to predict which direction that impacted these scores. Because
So,
it could have
yeah.
been a kindergartner all alone with no help.
Right.
Or it could have been a kindergartner with a parent on the
Lots
other
of
side
help.
going, this is what you do. We've seen hands like this, the head
Oh,
ducked
no.
down, like, yeah, we've seen it all. So it could be either way.
Same. Yep.
Ellen, you had a question?
Specifically to Torrington in the goal 2, number 4, what is SWIS?
Oh, Swiss. Swiss is our behavioral data tracking system.
What does that stand for?
Good question.
School-wide intervention system, I think, yeah.
So basically, it's how we're collecting behavioral data. We purchased it last year prior to COVID. I don't know
Just
if it was
prior.
purchased or
Just.
grant,
Like
but-
January. Mhm.
And we rolled it out, when we rolled out our school-wide, actually district-wide behavior expectations. And we now have that behavior support team, which I wanted to make sure I mentioned in this meeting. Having an RBT and having a behavior interventionist and a BCBA to support the school has drastically changed what I do for a living. Instead of being, running around chasing behaviors, I'm an instructional leader again, so I want to thank you for that. I think that will help us with our tiered system of support. And we use that Swiss data to determine what students need to come to student success for behavioral needs, and as well as just track trends. Is there a time of day that's tricky? Is there a place that's difficult, based on what we find in our Swiss data?
Yeah, but we use the same Swiss data also. I'd say what COVID has drastically reduced the amount of data that we have in our Swiss system right now, because writing about a behavior when a student's at home is not something that really happens. And then we've started to get back in the groove of using these again for students that are here, but it's so key. We really need teachers to be vigilant with filling out the forms that they use so we can really track all of that data. And when we have our meetings where we're talking about individual students, to really zoom in on what that particular student's doing, in addition to what Kelly's talking about, where we see 80% of our problems are the bus, the bathroom, and recess.
Recess not anymore though.
Yeah.
Cohorted recess has helped a lot.
Cohort recess.
Okay, we have a couple of people. Armand.
Thank you. Question on the remote versus the in-person scores. Do you have the data on that? And if so, was it a significant difference?
So I believe the remote students tended to, you can't group them all together, but tended to be better than the in-person students with scores. But again, I don't want to say that was because they were being helped, because the other piece of remote that's different, especially K3, is that it's straight instruction and nothing else. There's no behavior management. There's no, like, I gotta go to the bathroom. It's
Mhm.
it's teaching the entire time. So there's really no loss of instructional time unless, of course, the technology breaks out or the student doesn't show up. And they're able, what we see happening in our remote class is a lot more small group instruction. So oftentimes they'll have a quick mini lesson and then schedule kids 2, 3 at a time and meet with them and support them. So I think that their ability to say goodbye to 15 kids and meet with 3 kids at a time has impacted their results as well.
Yep. And the other thing we're really not able to look at yet is growth when comparing those two groups, just because of the way the change from hybrid to all in with some remote. We have specific classes that are remote now, where before there would be half and half. And so comparing the data then, we really weren't able to do.
And we have some kids that are on their 4th teacher. So,
Right.
they may have been remote, then they were hybrid, then they were in person, and they decided they wanted to be remote again. And it's all based on square footage. So you fit in these 4 squares. So when you come back, that's the room that you're going to go to. So it's really hard to track it based on individual students.
Fiona?
Just my question is the attendance team looking at for the remote students, just because attendance is taken so differently at elementary than it is at high school? So if Johnny is remote and Johnny comes in, maybe for the first period, but then Johnny doesn't log in for other periods of
Yeah,
the
so the
day, does
state
the
really
attendance
outlines
look
that
at that?
for us. We give them 48 hours. We give families flexibility in time to complete assignments. And then there is live instruction throughout the day. So when we meet with families to explain that there's live instruction, that's when they're getting new learning. It's important to attend that, but it's not required by the state. So if students do enough work to complete, I think it equals 3.5 hours or a half a school day worth of work, they can be marked present. And they have 48 hours to do that.
Wow,
So they can miss every single live meeting and be marked present.
Which is
a
quite a
disservice
test
to
for
the
teachers
kids.
So
Yeah,
then when we have these attendance calls and we say, yes, you technically could be present, but we really want you to go to the live meeting because that's where you're getting new learning. Those are the discussions kind of that we're having. And we're flexible with families. So we may have to prioritize for certain families. This is the work we really want you to spend your time on. If you can only do 3.5 hours, these are the things you're going to do. And these are the things that you can kind of wait. And if you have time, do them later.
And then we have other families that do 110% of everything. They're for every meeting, every assignment's complete, and then here's a little extra.
Mhm.
So we have some of that also, with obviously our attendance problems, but we have the same, we mirror that. It's the same, and it's that 50%, which is so hard to gauge with these little ones.
but the attendance team would look at if they're not logging into any of the stuff.
Yeah, usually it starts with
And
the
not doing
classroom
the work.
teacher. For us, they fill out a disengaged student form that we all share, the attendance team. And then each person on the attendance team has a grade level that they track and focus on,
Great.
and they make phone calls for each week. And so they build those relationships with that grade level, those disengaged students and those families, and figure out what it is that's getting in the way. And sometimes it is being relentlessly loving our kids is what I call it. And call, texting at 9:15, hey, they're not here. I haven't seen them logged in. What do you need from us? How can we help?
Securely is wonderful for that.
Oh, securely.
Securely is great for that family that calls and says, our internet's not working today. It's like, well, you're streaming a movie right now. So those are the kind of things, they may not even know that their child is doing that sometimes, but it's usually, it's a small handful, but it is, I like that expression, loving them relentlessly.
Yeah, Ally, thank you, Ally, because Ally is responsible for getting them early for us and finding it as a way for us to kind of be the watchdogs and
And we can communicate through that to students too. So it's not always just the teacher that's doing that. I find myself chatting with a student, you really need to leave that video and get back to it. I can see your schoolwork's open in another tab. You need to open that tab.
You can
and get
actually
to it.
flip them back to their meeting.
Yeah.
Oh,
Which
you're
we
kidding.
never thought it
Oh,
would
it's a
be
great
great for
program.
K3.
Securely.
Yeah,
It
awesome.
really is.
Great
It's a
for
wonderful
K3
tool.
because they're, off doing Lord knows what.
Right.
and then
Just like you
bring
do in
them
a
back.
classroom. You need to come back to this.
Yeah.
room.
One more
Right.
question, well, I hope one more. Go ahead, Jasper.
The disengaged students, is that something that the teachers fill out when students are not attending the live learning, or is that only something that gets filled out if they are not fulfilling the 3.5 hours of the asynchronous stuff?
They basically fill it out if they've reached 2 absences. They start the phone calls themselves. If they're having trouble netting any change in behavior, then they reach out to the attendance team, who then kind of picks up from there. And then if it gets better, it goes back to the teacher and they continue. It's really a collaborative approach. So their teachers are still expected to sort of expect students and call and reach out to families when they don't. But if they're not getting the result that they need, we jump in and help.
Ours is pretty similar. We have a referral to attendance team form instead, we call it, and but it's the same idea.
Okay, can we end this, or someone insist on asking a question? Okay,
I was going to, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I did have a question on the strategic coaching for the teachers. Just wondering high level, what's involved in that and how often that's done.
I would love for it to be more often.
I'm sure.
For us, we really looked at our data and decided that we would focus our coaching on that early literacy and the phonics and phonemic awareness skills, because that's where the biggest gaps were. And
Okay.
being a tier 1 issue, it's an instructional issue more than a student gaps issue, because it existed pre-COVID. It's not new. So our coaches, we started kindergarten, and the cycles usually last anywhere from 4 to 6, and she meets with 2 teachers each cycle and then goes on to the next 2 teachers. And really, it's not a one size fits all. The coach at Torrington meets with the teachers first, looks at student data to determine what that teacher needs to work on. And then they set a plan together and meet off. And then at the end, they reflect on the student data and student outcomes based on the cycle.
And those are very similar. We're really where we'd like this to go is that every teacher would be going through a cycle at least once a year. More would be even better. And where they went with that cycle and how long it was would be dependent on the data that came from that classroom. So the coaches could really focus in on what that class and what that teacher needed.
Great. Thank you. Great presentation too. Thank you very much.
Yes, excellent presentation, and thank you to all the people who are in this room and some who aren't, who are also a part of the committees which are listed on the front of this document. Thank you very much for all the work and for the presentation.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, system-wide focus areas. Sue, anything to report there? Anything?
No, it's nice that you're getting to hear the perspective from the schools, because I
Right.
think that's much more meaningful.
Right. Okay. Our school improvement committee board goals that we are paying attention to. District strategic plan, integration city strategic plan. Once that plan is developed, nothing going on there because nothing's going on at City Hall. Monitor and support middle school, high school building committee, allocate resources, etc. Pathways approach. Building committee had a report about the SLAM, what's SLAM's role? They're the
Architects.
Architects presented the proposals, many proposals, not necessarily specific to exactly Torrington High School, but the sort of things that we would be doing and looking at. Pretty impressive work so far, designed to accommodate the pathways. So that part of it is working right along. And building committee has access to the PowerPoint presentation that they gave us. And if you haven't had a chance to see that, ask, I will forward it to you if I can. And there's some beautiful things that can happen and that will be specifically applied to us very soon. Oversee and support whatever is necessary to deal with educational impact, the effects of prolonged distance learning. Okay, well, that's an evolving. Distinguished alumnus recipient selection and details of presentation. Okay, we just tonight got packets, which I will give out to committee members. Sue, you can pick yours up at Midgeon Avenue. Could you get to Midgeon Avenue and pick up your package of
Yes,
nominees?
I can. Yep.
And
Yep. I'll come by tomorrow
thank you. And
during like lunchtime.
Ronnie should get one too. Do we have one for Ronnie?
I can certainly have one
Can
made
we
for
make
Ronnie.
one, Ronnie?
Yep.
So can you get one by interschool mail or whatever?
Yeah, I'll send it to you, Ronnie, okay?
And if we would look at that and come in, this committee, come into a meeting 45 minutes before the board meeting, which will be 5:15 on the, what was that, the 28th? you
28th,
said, Sue?
yep.
28th. Then the members of the committee will choose one person to then present to the Board of Education to be designated as our distinguished alumnus for
That's what's on
this
the calendar.
year.
How many do we have, John? How many nominees?
Oh, 8 or 9? Sue?
Oh, good.
Sorry,
How many nominees?
I think there are 11.
11, okay.
Oh, even better.
Considering that some of them were from last year,
Right.
right? Yeah.
It's not definite.
So
Okay.
people could come in with just the top 3. That should take care of that part of it and make our meeting more efficient and more possible on the 28th. So this committee will be doing that on the 28th, and we will talk about details of presentation when the time comes. Civic virtue in the curriculum, I think I am going to, because we don't have all that much time, I'm going to move that just to next month. So anyone who wants to,
I'll ask her to.
is that okay, Sue and Sue? Next month?
Yep.
Next month.
Sure.
Thank you. Transition details for homeschooled returnees. What's going on there? What are we doing?
So what's going on there is what goes on there all the time, right? So this year, obviously, we have many, many more students who are homeschooling, but we always do have a small number. And occasionally they elect to re-enroll. There is a process. There's a process that the state, it's guidance from the state. They don't really take a firm position. However, there are, if a student decides to return to school and re-enroll after being homeschooled, the family has to demonstrate that they have met criteria for credit acquisition and that sort of thing, if that's what you're asking.
And what does our intake procedure consist of? You say
So
parents present that they have done this, but is there a testing program?
So
around?
there's typically a portfolio, so families keep a portfolio of what they've done. The majority of our students who are homeschooled do participate in they're enrolled in an online type program that issues transcripts and that sort of thing. So in those cases, it makes it easier. We work with, at the high school level, for example, we work with the school counseling office to do an audit. There are our own internal assessments that we can administer. We have the ability to do that to make sure that we are re-enrolling the child in the appropriate grade and placement.
And are we expecting a large number who have been pulled out for homeschooling during the pandemic to return to us, or don't we have any way of knowing?
We don't know that yet. So every year, even pre-COVID, I reach out to all the families who are homeschooling their children in the spring, usually mid-May. So I will do that again. We'll have a better idea then.
Okay. How many kids are being homeschooled, do we know?
I think it was 86 at last count, which was like a week ago. Mm-hmm.
Predominantly at the younger ages,
Mhm.
younger grades.
Yeah, okay,
Mm-hmm.
okay. Website, Altice, social media updates. Anything going on there we need to know? Oh, there we go. Okay.
Last 28 days, 279 people viewed our Facebook page. We have 13 new people who liked our page. Our posts went quite through the roof, and you'll see at the bottom why. 2,408 posts were reached, 255 types of engagement, like, share, comment. So here's to highlight what Peter was also saying. 1,031 people engaged in our kindergarten fair, which was phenomenal.
That's way more than our enrollment projection.
It was really well received and everybody had a look at it. So we had, even within some of the sessions, we had over 100 people, which was great. So,
Okay,
love that.
well, thank you. Okay, so we're done with that?
Mhm.
Okay, any tag update? Laura, I see you are here.
Not too much. We have actually begun to get a little bit of requests from a couple of families that have asked a little bit about the process for evaluation. And we've shared the forms for the parents to fill out if they're interested in referring their child. So that's where we are at this point. We haven't done any qualifications yet, but at least now we are starting to get out there with some of the referrals.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Pre-K update. Do we have something on that?
Laura asked that we add this to the agenda, and you have something in there. Jess has it. Yep.
So I actually wasn't going to hand that out because the start time and end times are in there. So if you could just ignore those. But what we wanted to talk about is, as I've explained from the beginning, when we are looking at the needs of our children, it's always going to be about these are our kids and this is what they need, not these are our programs that we need to fit them in. So as we've been going along, we've started to uncover some different needs that were not being fulfilled. One of the things the state was really honest about was time with non-disabled peers. And we really had to put some plans in place. When I walked into the district, they were already beginning to try to figure out how to increase that time. So this year, Lisa Valenzici has been able to take on the pre-K supervision. Definitely not a small task, and she spends a great deal of time there in addition to her other two schools. But she's been working really hard with the pre-K team, and we have some exciting news about next year. So I asked her if she can jump on, and I'm going to let her tell you about what our plan is for next year. So go ahead, Lee.
You're on mute.
Unmute yourself, please.
You'd think I was a newbie at that. I apologize. So thanks for letting me speak to you tonight. I'm so excited and passionate about this. So I don't know if you read through the info sheet that we put into that Laura put in the packet, but we are pleased to announce the addition of integrated morning and afternoon 4-year-old preschool classrooms for our typically developing students. And the really, really exciting news is that it is at no cost to Torrington residents, and transportation will be provided at no cost. So we think that's a real game changer by offering transportation, because we know that's often a barrier for some of our families. So we really worked hard, and Laura made it happen that we could provide transportation for these students. So, I'll be brief. In a nutshell, for this year, we started small. We are offering 24 slots to our typically developing peers. And an integrated preschool is really basically where we have both typical peer role models and children who receive special education services learning side by side. And there's lots of evidence out there about why that's a really effective model. And it speaks to what Laura said, time with non-disabled peers, and also providing students with the least restrictive environment. We found ourselves in a situation this year where our afternoon classes had no access to typical peers. And that was really worrisome to myself and Laura and the preschool team, that we didn't have any typical peers to integrate into the classroom. So after spring break, we are going to open up the application process to all families who have children who will be 4 years old by September 1st. Again, we started small, so we started out with 4-year-olds for this year. Hopefully we'll expand that at some point. And we're going to post this on the homepage of our website, district website. We're going to send out a power announcement. We really want to make sure we're casting a wide net so all families are aware of this opportunity. We'll send out a power announcement. We're going to ask K-5 buildings to send out the flyer that you're seeing in front of you. We're also going to try to get some of these flyers out into key locations within the community. So we're hoping that we get an onslaught of applicants. So what we decided to do is that we would put all applicants into a lottery. So it'd be pure lottery just based on who applied. We're going to probably start with approximately 30 applicants, again, by lottery. And we will invite those 30 students in for a brief screening. We're not digging too deep, or just looking at some surface level skills for those typical peers, things like, not number recognition, color recognition, some counting skills, following some simple directions, etc. And then at the end of the screening, we're going to bring 5 students in at a time so we can maintain COVID, regulations. And we're going to have simulate something that would look like a circle time, where they'll either hear a story, they'll listen to do a finger play, some kind of movement, and we'll be able to observe them in a more natural environment, how they would, perform in a classroom with other peers. And once we've selected the 24 from the 30 or so that we screen, we will let parents know who's been selected. And we're really, really excited to provide this opportunity to preschool families in Torrington. In addition to providing an environment where our special education students have access to typical peers, we're going to provide a rich learning environment to Torrington preschool age children, which will only serve them better and be better prepared for kindergarten. And last thing I want to just say is that our curriculum will be grounded in, it's called, you'll hear the acronym ELDS, which stands for Connecticut's Early Learning and Development Standards. And what those ELDS do is they outline what children from birth to age 5 should know and be able to do. So our curriculum will be grounded in the ELDS. And the other really exciting thing is that Peter or Kelly mentioned earlier, our second step curriculum, there is a version for pre-K. So we thought it would make most sense to infuse that curriculum into the preschool classroom, so the children become familiar with the language that they'll encounter when they do eventually enter kindergarten. So really exciting news. We're hopeful that the community sees this is a great opportunity, and we get tons and tons of applications.
And this will be for Torrington residents only?
Correct.
Okay. Questions?
How many students will you accept into the program through the screening process? You said you would screen 30, but how many would actually get into the program?
We have 24 slots available for next year. And again, that was partially based on budgeting, because again, Laura was able to get creative with the busing situation. So we can, for this year, we can only manage 24. Again, hopefully we can expand that in years to come.
Yep, and again, it's also going to be based every time on the needs of what we need in the IEPs. So we have many children that need that integrated model. However, they needed more work, for example, on their goals and objectives. And while we really respect and want to continue to build our Head Start co-teaching model, for some children, they needed a little bit of a different kind of curriculum, and Head Start is kind of governed with what their curriculum needs to look like. So right now we're able to plan for one morning group and 2 afternoon groups based on the needs of our children, the other programs we need in pre-K, and start with that, and hopefully it's going to go well, and then we'll see what we need moving forward. There will also be an ongoing waiting list. So anybody else that applies and would possibly be able to participate, if we don't have a slot for them right off the bat, we might have a slot down the pike for them.
Just as a follow-up, will there be any additional staff required, or?
Nope.
Now, will this displace the current Head Start use of Forbes?
So they are going to, one of the Head Start classes is going to be going to another location, but the other classes will still be there, and we will still continue to have one co-taught class with them. So that is continuing as well.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Other questions? Jess?
Forgive me if this is something that's already been answered through the budget process, but how, is this general budget or is this coming out of a grant?
No.
So I need Ed to.
Yeah, pre-K is all in our general budget. It's
Thank you,
already
Ally.
accounted for. It's not like PDG. In the past, we had a grant
Right.
that was pre-K. but
Yeah,
it's in regular budget.
Other questions? Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for this news.
Thanks, Lise.
Thank you.
Alliance update. What's new?
Yeah, so just a quickie update. We did meet with Iris last week, who is our state representative, and she always has some celebrations, accommodations, as well as things she wants us to work on. And so she was happy about our behavioral data throughout the district. We're doing very well in terms of in-school suspensions, out-of-school suspensions, expulsions and suspensions, just overall, not surprisingly. So yeah, the parents have had more that they've had to deal with, their own ISS, OSS. So, and also our SEL, our social emotional supports and opportunities that we've given to our students and to our families, we were commended for that, as well as Allie's presentation on best practices that was shown and is posted throughout the state, and other people can avail themselves of her wonderful strategies and techniques. And so we were very proud of all that she's been able to accomplish, and that it's being recognized statewide. And then in terms of our growth areas, she's concerned about attendance, so are we. We talked a little bit about the attendance teams and how we're tracking it. You got to hear firsthand what it looks like at a school and how we're addressing those needs. It's great to have you here so that folks can really hear what's going on the ground in the schools. So in terms of, and I know you'll hear about this more next, just what are we doing to accelerate learning? What are we doing to address our students' needs, targeting where they're at, where they need to grow, learn, what gaps do they have, enhance that whole piece. And I know Sue and her team will be talking a little bit about that more this evening. The other piece that, because it's a statewide initiative, it's a national initiative, it was our former commissioner's initiative, as well as now as Secretary of State. They were very happy to see that our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee is ongoing, is alive and well. We do have a number of different programs where we are really trying to support our students who are socioeconomically disadvantaged, our bilingual students who have some really exceptional skills that we can use. I know at our last board meeting, Kim had talked about having our students who might want to become paras, moving on and maybe working toward their associate's degree and coming back and working within our schools, much needed. Today's Students, Tomorrow's Teachers is another program where it's really building on our own students and allowing them to become educators. Maybe they are the first to graduate from high school or from college, and really being able to come back and work within our schools, which would be an exceptional program. So for a little bit of money in our Alliance grant, we're hoping that we can build our students, build their skills, their motivation, their excitement for coming back and becoming educators. And hopefully they have a passion like we do for helping our students. Be great to build that within our own community. So it's always a very positive meeting. We learn a lot. I think that she's impressed by all the things that we do. And then for areas of growth, she always has some suggestions and some strategies for how to move us forward.
Question.
Sure.
I'm thinking of teachers and teacher recruitment and everything. I'm guessing that the FTA is dead and has been for a long time. Future Teachers of America used to be a standard part of every extracurricular, as we used to call it, now co-curricular activity program. Any such thing?
Yeah, very different now. I mean, Kim can certainly speak to that. That now they have so many different initiatives.
Teach for
I believe-
America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this new Today's Students.
And do we have those going in this as a co-curricular activity?
So we're trying to build it.
Right,
Right.
because if we want to recruit teachers that demographically look like us, well, We have the kids.
Right, exactly. And that's what we're hoping.
Yeah.
In terms of our programs. So we're gonna build that. Waterbury has a really great program where they connect with CCSU, and we're hoping to look into that program and possibly explore that for our students as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Lots of good opportunities.
Just about the attendance, you had said that Iris was concerned about our attendance, and I'm assuming that's even taking into account the more lenient term that now currently it constitute what attendance is? Is that
Sure.
correct? So
Sure.
is that something, are we kind of on par with other districts? Are we behind other districts? Like,
We're on par with other districts in terms of their struggles, because we've had so many students, all of us, we talk as superintendents on a weekly basis, sometimes twice weekly, just to talk about some of our challenges. And it's really, really difficult. And as you've heard me say before, the home visits, the connections, you've heard how many interactions and how many different strategies they use to really reach out and relentlessly love their children and make sure that they are participating. And I think that that's been a constant battle all this year. When you don't see our students, it's harder to pull them in.
Yeah, but she did say that, you know, Torrington, like everywhere else
Yeah.
in the state, is experiencing this challenge with, you know, keeping kids engaged. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but she still wants to acknowledge that, you know, it is something that we need to work on. It's not something where it's like, oh, we'll just give you a pass. You know, what are you doing? And let's make sure that we continue to enhance that. So they continue to challenge us, which is a good thing. We appreciate that.
well, that's good. It's hard because like the other thing you mentioned was the behavior issues. Obviously, that's going to be different right now with kids not being in the building as much. And so
Right.
like some of those metrics that were being judged on cease to be applicable in the same ways that they were last year.
Right.
So that's where I was just wondering about that. Have we noticed any improvement in the attendance numbers with all of our schools being back in full day, having full week, having that option?
I think it's gotten better. I can certainly defer to the experts over here. They see it every day. But I think that now that we have more in-person, I think Kelly was mentioning that her enrollment has gone up, and I think her attendance, I think it's similar for Peter as
So
well.
because our remote teachers don't take attendance for 2 days, theirs doesn't really show up on our daily attendance sheet that we print every day. So our daily attendance sheet typically, I'm not counting, I'm just looking. You know, last year would be like a list full of kids that were absent pre-COVID. Now our in-person kids, the kids that are absent, it's usually a very short list of kids. And then the remote kids show up on sort of a different list because it takes 2 days to take their attendance. So that it's really the remote kids that we're struggling with, not the in-person kids.
Right.
Unless of course they're quarantined, but then they're marked present remote.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
We've been
gotten
back
used
in at our level really since, was it October 26th? I think
Yeah.
was the day that we were in this. We've been back in a long time.
Yeah.
But you know, when a class is quarantined, when a student is quarantined, we can see those numbers dip. And then when they come back in, they tend to go back up.
That's a challenge.
Well, and then with secondary, because they've gone full in more recently.
Recently.
Sure.
It's fine if you don't know, I'm just curious.
Robin's on there.
I don't have hard numbers for you to answer your question, but one of the things that we did is we asked the interventionists at the high school just to gather some anecdotal data from the students to get the student perspective now that they're back in. And I mean, we had dozens and dozens of students respond and say, basically, thank the good heavens we're back in school. You know, I mean, they were commenting that they never realized how much they appreciated coming to school before. So I'm assuming that that's having an impact on their attendance, you know, and we will certainly gather those numbers.
Robin, something to add to that?
Yes, we were running about, when the kids first came back, it was, actually, I'm just going to minimize again so I can see it. You know, over 80% in the beginning of that first week. At a few of the days, you know, 85%, 86%, but then it definitely has unfortunately tailed off a little bit. You know, and we're still, it's much better, but kids, you know, sometimes will stay home and we'd rather have them in school. You know, we're still seeing that sometimes where they have chosen full in, but they do tend to sometimes log in remotely. But the kids absolutely are loving being back, doing much better academically, receiving more supports because it's easier to do that. And not that we didn't try when they were home, but it is much better for the student, obviously, to have them back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, barriers to student success, that's the same thing, right?
That's this. This is probably going to take us about 10 minutes. Is that? Is
Then
that
maybe, would it bother you, would it destroy you if we moved it to next month?
Would it destroy you folks?
Well, I mean, if this is what you came for and wouldn't come to the next meeting, then we'll do it tonight.
Is this representative of work that's currently going on?
This
Is there
is-
going to be a whole nother month's worth of work that happens?
It's a
between now and our
combination.
discussion if we don't discuss it tonight?
Basically, it's a holdover from 2 months ago.
Right.
That was the work or the information that was gathered to inform the February Professional Development Day. So some of it is yesterday's news, but we were going to quickly review that and then just talk to you about what we were doing to address some of this, which is where we wanted to spend the time.
Okay, Ellen, how long is policy taking?
Yeah.
Hard to tell.
I don't
Let's
know.
move
It
this
is
to
hard
next
to
month then, okay? Because we have
I mean, it
another
could be
meeting
quick,
after
but-
this that may take, so thank you for coming
Which would you
anyway,
rather?
but, okay, next month. And I'm gonna move CABE to next month too. If you know, there's no reason to do that tonight, is there, CABE? That can wait till next month.
No, because we just need to do that before we get our number from the city.
Okay. Okay, so we've cleared a lot of that table. Topics for future meetings got a lot longer. Civic virtue in the curriculum, barriers to student success, CABE, social promotion, homogeneous versus heterogeneous grouping, and all of that might make it. Comments for the good of the order. Start at this table, please.
Thank you for another wonderful meeting. It's an absolute pleasure to work with the K-3 administrative staff in my role as the elementary curriculum person. So I'm so impressed by all the great work we're doing. We're really, making great differences in the outcomes for students. So thank you so much. And of course, thank you to all of you for your constant support of all that we're doing here at Torrington Public Schools.
So.
Same. Thank you, everybody, for all of your work. Thank you to our team. It's a great team doing good things.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm very proud of my children. I know they don't see themselves as like, but I'm just proud of them that when they get to present and talk about all the great things they're doing, and they've worked collaboratively. So thank you. You make me proud, doing great stuff.
Thanks, Ma.
Make her take you out, Bryce.
Should have said grandma would have been. Okay, Marissa. No?
Thank you.
Oh, Armand.
Thank you, everybody. Keep up the hard work. It is going to pay off, I promise.
Kim?
Great meeting. Nice presentation from the K-3 schools. Well done.
Okay. Laura?
Thanks, guys. Have a great night.
Robin?
Thank you, guys. It's always great to hear all the positivity and the hard work and being able to share it. So it's good stuff.
Ronnie?
Thank you very much. It was really exciting, and it's nice to hear what the elementary kids are doing because then I can see it come up to the middle school. So thanks.
I can't see the next name on that screen. Oh, okay, we have, Sue, you can go next.
Did you say Sue?
So you can go next, yeah.
Okay. Yep. Thank you for your presentation tonight. Very informative. It helped put perspective around the handout. So thank you for your time and great meeting. Thanks, everybody.
Lisa?
Thank you, everybody. Great having the opportunity to share some exciting news with you. Appreciate your time and appreciate my colleagues, Kelly, Georgia, Peter, Alden. They're a pleasure to work with and great job presenting.
Okay. Kelly?
I want to thank you again for the opportunity to present. Like I said, I am a longstanding Torrington administrator at 7 years. And I feel at this point that we're really going in the right direction, even though we're in the midst of a pandemic. I am very hopeful of where we're going. And it's thanks to the people here. So thank you.
Georgia?
I really am not shy. But Ally, if you could pull up that, one of the first pictures we included in our slides was of one of our students, and I think he says it all. I feel like our kids have stronger voices than some of our adults. And so I just want to highlight in the very first picture. Right, it's smack in the middle. Nope, the first slide. There we go. We are all in this together, and we can't do it without you. So thank you very much for your support and giving us the opportunity to help and serve Torrington students and families.
Thank you. Alden?
Just happy to be here.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So just the one thing to add that I hope our talking today doesn't push to the side is if you're walking our buildings right now and you see our kids, other than the masks on their face and the fact that they're standing further apart, you hear giggles, you hear laughing, you hear happy children in our hallways, in our classrooms, and I'm not sure that they even get that this is different. So it's still, our schools are still wonderful, happy places to be. So thank you for the chance tonight and for letting us be here.
Thank you. Ally?
Well, I'd love to dovetail with Andrew, but he already said it all and so perfectly, so thank you.
Kathy?
Great presentations, enjoyed them, and I'm very excited about the preschool. That's something that I've wondered about for years and years and years. So I'm very excited to see that that's going to be happening in our district. So thank you for all the work that's gone into that as well. And I saw those happy kids on the playground the other day. I happened to be going by at lunchtime, and they were running. They were having so much fun. I just kept driving and looking. They looked great and having fun.
Okay. Ellen?
Thank you, everyone. It's great to hear the sharing. You know, it's nice to see, you know, and have you present. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you to all the presenters. It was great information. And in keeping with our fluid and flexibility, the 28th is one of the possible dates for the joint meeting with the city for our budget. But it hasn't been finalized yet. So we'll try to get some more solid answers tomorrow because there's a couple dates out there right now. So we may have to bump other things if that ends up being the joint meeting.
We're
So
meeting City Hall. They'll be live by then, won't they?
I think they had their first live meeting this Monday.
Oh, they did?
Yep.
Wonderful. Okay.
So, but we'll keep everybody up to date if we have to move the board meeting, but
They have all those little rooms around them. Jess?
Thanks, everybody, for all the info, and I look forward to discussing the things that we didn't have time to discuss.
And I'd like to thank everybody who did present and the people who came and didn't get to present. You will get your turn and it'll be all the better for that. And what Peter said, every time I drive around town and go past the buildings, I think how much I miss getting to go into the buildings for the various events and the other excuses that we come up with to just be there. You can't be unhappy in an elementary school. I'm convinced you cannot be unhappy. And even the high school, I thought of that today when I drove past the high school. I miss being able to go in and see what's going on there and participate in things. So, anyway.
We can't wait till you, we're looking forward to you coming.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
slippery.
We have John,
I'm here.
Kathy,
I'm not on the committee, but I'm here.
Jess is here. Somewhere. Cindy Prentice.
Oh, I'm here. Sorry, I was on mute.
Yep, thank you. Also, Sue, Ally, Fiona.
Jess will be
Kim.
here. She just.
Is Armin still there?
Armin still on? No? Okay. Approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
No,
No.
you need one of the people.
It's-
Or Sue
it's
to
Sue
put it.
to put it.
She's the alternate, yeah. John, do you want a second?
Thank you.
Approval of the
He's
agenda?
not-
Can I second?
can't,
Is
I'm
the
not on
alternate?
committee.
Yes, you are.
I don't think so.
Can I second or no?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, yep, second.
All in
Sorry.
favor?
Aye.
Approval of the minutes from November 4th.
Oh, God.
I have to tell you, Marissa and I went back and forth on this, right,
Oh, I
Marissa? We were
know.
like, oh, boy.
Thanks.
2020.
Oh, no, John is not on this committee. Anyone?
So moved.
I mean, I read them over. It's,
Is there a second?
Second, I'll second. I read them this, when they came out.
All in favor?
Aye.
Public participation, anyone from the public on the line? None. Discussion and next step, school activity fund. It's a nice policy. But
Page
if you
15,
turn
right?
to page 15, it seems that we have our Director of Business Services by name on this policy. So we need to take that off. And should it be
Why don't we just leave Director of Business
Yeah.
Services?
just Director of Business Services? That's
Yeah.
still a valid title? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or should you
Designee?
have designee if we don't have one?
Kim, are we going to use, what's the new, how did you?
Director, yeah, Director of Finance and Operations, I think is the title.
Okay.
So, but I like designee. I think that's good.
Or designee?
And then they can fill it in, yeah.
Okay. Everything else is the same. The only other changes are just the procedures have been updated. And I just wanted to make sure that this, when the policy goes out with the procedures, that this doesn't have Danielle's name on it.
You're talking about the new forms that we,
Correct.
yeah.
Correct. So we'll bring this to the full board.
Ellen,
Yes.
so have we done away with the title Director of Business Services? Is it now Director of Finance and Operations? Would that, because it says Director of Business Services in a lot of places in here.
So we can
We
do a
can just
find and
do an all.
replace, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, find all. and
But what is the
correct it.
difference though? I think because we should talk about a change in position at some
I
point.
think we just did a different title. What made you post it that way, Kim? Is that just a new term, just like when we changed guidance to school counselors?
That was the job description we discussed.
But the title.
Right,
But
we're
why
just
was the
worried
title
about, we're
changed?
just saying
That's all.
that the title, right, I think, if I can.
Wasn't
Because-
my,
No, but I think that the business, and Ed's been doing this, instead of just finance, he's been doing finance and operations. You see him talking about facilities, you see him going to the buildings, you see him as, working part and parcel with the facilities director. So it's beyond just a business services, which is what we had before. The particular person we had before didn't have any expertise in that area, but when we hire somebody new, we need to have somebody who really knows operations as well as finances. It's important to have both of those elements because it's a checks and balances with the facilities director so that they can go back and forth in terms of
Right, but
what's
right
best.
now, the title is Director of Business Services.
But it's only going to exist until June.
So why don't we have a superintendent or designee?
That's
right
fine.
now.
Yep.
Okay.
And what do you think, guys think of that?
I mean, I didn't know, about the changing of the title. I just noticed it sometimes here in a lot of places, but I feel like that sounds like a change in a position, in like the job description of a position. And would that make it harder for us to fill that position when the time comes, having it be operations versus just business services?
This is a new expectation, to be really honest with you, in terms of what you have. The old definition was business services, people who did your finances, but really didn't necessarily know about what was going on at the buildings. This was a move, as we had other superintendents, they were pushing even this person who's listed to take over operations. And it's come up a number of times since we've not had anybody in that position, that you need somebody in that position. I think it was Charmaine somebody else who was yet another interim had that background. And I think the longer people are in that particular position, you have that combination. Yes, I think regardless, it's going to be very hard to find somebody for that position. It's challenging, Kim, yes?
Yes, and typically they do oversee the operational side because many of the RFPs and things like that that come through are related to operations. So there is always a component that reports to finance. So I think it's always been under that umbrella, whether it was dotted line or direct report. And I think prior to my arrival in Torrington, it was an understanding that the operations piece was under that business services umbrella.
Yes, and I think it's become even more critical now.
So I think the title change is more, I wouldn't necessarily even say it's a change, I would say it's more about clarity. That role has always included a component of operations, and that's our expectation moving forward.
But the job description remains the same.
The job description, again, it was from before I arrived. That job was created before my arrival. I know we looked at it when we posted it, but that was the job that was posted when I arrived, when Charmaine was interim. That was the job that was posted. And so I think it's created clarity, and I don't think we changed any components of that job the way it existed when it was posted when I got here.
It's a state certification, isn't it?
085, the school business administrator.
Okay, have they changed any of the requirements for that or the coursework required or anything?
No, it's the same coursework, and that
changing the title doesn't make any difference, and we can change the title
Correct.
to whatever we want. Okay.
Right. But again, I think it's really just to create clarity for the people that are applying so that they understand that that component is part of the expectation of the job.
Go ahead. Can we have this discussion about this in budget when we're looking at the number with the different position? To talk more about the position?
About the.
Well, because I don't really think this is the discussion about this position as a policy, but I think it's a discussion that we probably need to have. So I think for the policy, could we just switch it to superintendent or designee and then move to budget or facilities, the discussion about this position and the salary range for this position?
So everywhere it refers to Director of Business Services for now, we're going to replace with superintendent or designate.
I don't know, that's just my suggestion. I don't know. I think most of our other policies have superintendent or designee, not another position in central.
Which is true, yeah. I mean, I remember it that way too.
Whatever.
Whoever it
Director of
is.
Financial Operations.
But right, this is something the Personnel Committee under the old structure would have
Right.
talked about, but we
Right.
don't have a real home for that
Right.
under this structure. It's a policy.
I mean, we currently have a director of business services, correct?
We have an interim.
Interim director of business services.
Right.
Mhm.
Should we just make the change of taking Danielle's name out of here and then bring it back? If we have a hiring that precipitates a change in the job title? Because it says Director of Business Services in here a whole bunch of times, and it sounds, I think it would sound overly laborious to say the superintendent or his or her designee. Well, I
Right.
mean, because obviously this is going to be the director of business services, whoever holds that position,
Well, it can be whoever the superintendent designates.
but it's
So-
not
But
going to be.
But so part of the problem is we did have a gap in a business manager that in between some of these times is my concern. So we actually didn't have, I mean, hopefully that will never happen again, but we did have that gap in service.
But I think when we look at this as a policy that the administrators are going to be using, we don't want them all going to sue as the superintendent with any questions.
Right.
You know what I mean? I think this has always been handled, the policy has always been handled by the business office. So in other words, if there was a question but from a building administrator, they would get in touch with the business, to talk to the business manager about any of the paperwork
Right.
and forms that would need it to be done.
But by the same token, the superintendent can say, I designate the interim business manager to be that person and let the administrators know that.
I understand what
Yeah.
Kathy's saying.
No, I
because
understand
If we
that
go back
too.
to the conversation that we had with all the PTO presidents
Right.
about the forms, we left it with them and we left it on the forms. We left business office. So then we'd have to revisit that. we're
But that's procedures. That's their procedures where they submit their forms and their accounting, which is different than this policy.
I mean, we could keep it as director of business services until June
Well,
and then
and just-
revisit it.
Just on the portion though, for the debit card, that's all we're changing.
Just taking her name out.
Her name out of the debit card portion.
But then because the title director of business services is in here in a whole bunch
In a
of.
number of
So if you're
places.
going to change it in one place, you have to change it in all the places. And does it make
Right.
sense to do that at the moment? I mean, you could change the Danielle line and then also put like an asterisk somewhere that says in the event, that the director of business services is not available, the superintendent may appoint a designee or something to that effect, if we want to cover that other aspect of it in the meantime. Because if it just comes down to a matter of a title change, that'll take us 2 seconds to talk about when the time comes.
Kim, you had a question or comment?
I was just going to suggest that if you were concerned about the title, you could just say business administrator for business services. So whatever the title ends up being, if it changes based on the needs of the board,
I like that.
just say administrator for business services.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we wouldn't have to change it again,
They're trying to not have a meeting, Ellen?
maybe.
No, that's a really good
Yeah.
suggestion. That
Yeah.
covers it, no matter what the
Thank you,
title
Kim.
is.
And just, I know the other question that came up was about policies and whether or not we have other administrators. I do think many of the personnel policies do say human resources director. So we do have other policies that say, that reflect
Right.
the
Title.
administrator that kind of oversees the area that they fall under. So.
Okay.
Sue DePretis? Are you still-
Yes, I'm
Any
here.
comments?
I agree with the title that Kim suggested
Okay,
for the time being.
so we'll change anywhere that's listed to that
Yeah.
title and then to the full board.
Excuse me, thank you.
That's okay.
I promise I'm not sick, everyone. Okay, so make the change into the full board.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, next, sudden cardiac arrest awareness.
Right, so
New
Kim,
policy.
we're on to sudden cardiac arrest awareness. This was a policy that Kim and I were actually just doing a quick look at what Shipman had and realizing that we were missing this policy. Kim can speak to it better than I can, but I did speak with Mike McKenna. He's been doing this for the past several years. We just don't have the policy in our manual and we really ought to. So I don't know, Kim, if you have anything to
Sure.
add.
Yeah, no, I think Sue and I have just kind of talked about policy and how we really want to, I know the board has talked about for a little bit of time now, doing a crosswalk to kind of check policies in Shipman versus what we have and kind of be able to figure that out. So we started doing that somewhat, and this was a policy that we just noticed that we didn't have at all. And then as Sue said, we reached out to Mike McKenna and they've been doing this. It's a CIAC requirement. So they have been following this. So I think we should just have a policy to reflect that we're aware that it's a statute and that we're required to do it. And we're following that guideline.
Yeah, so we've really brought it forward as a housekeeping item, really. It's a formality.
Good. Jess, anything? Okay, well, you're reading. Yeah. Sue, anything?
If it's something we're already doing and it's just a matter of adding it to be thorough, then I don't know what there is to discuss. Unless I'm missing something. Sue, am I missing something?
No, no, really, honestly, it was just something that kind of jumped out at us as, oh, we don't have that policy in our manual, yet it's required by the CIAC and we know that we are adhering.
We're practicing it, right.
Exactly. So, our policy manual should reflect
Right.
that. Yep.
Yeah, so we should just add it.
Kim's got her hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think we always want our policies to be reflective of what we're doing so that if someone else is ever in place, they're aware of what the expectations are.
Right. Anything, Jess?
No, I mean, I know we're already doing this. I've signed off on this for one or both of
Yeah,
my
I was gonna
kids
say.
many times
Yeah.
over the last few years. So,
Yeah, it's right there in what the sign-ups are.
Okay, so we'll also send this to the Board of Ed. Any comments, Fiona? Anyone else?
Do we need a number for this?
Pardon?
Do we need a policy number for it?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll find a number.
Okay.
Marissa can help us with that.
Yeah,
Yep.
make sure they're numbered, so it's the pages. And this is only one
That's
page.
fine, I wanna,
Yeah.
That's
not
just
often.
mine. Yeah.
Yeah, athletics is 4004, so I wasn't sure if we wanted to, and there already is a 4005, so I figured we probably wanted it to be somewhere next to athletics.
Sure,
That'd be good.
Okay, so
Thank
we'll
you.
assign a
good
number
idea.
and bring to the board. Okay.
Okay. After your meetings, anything else you find that we don't have? Anyone
Yeah,
else?
we'll keep working on that.
Are we gonna look at that committee's policy?
Oh, yes.
the what, I'm sorry.
The committees.
The committee's policy?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Anything else? No?
No.
Okay. Comments for the good of the order, John?
I'd like to start just by saying that I'm happy we had a policy committee meeting tonight, but also Good Friday, our superintendent is clicking away because of contacts and things like that. That was Good Friday.
That was Good Friday.
Yeah, I just
Not such a good Friday.
respect that so much, what you're doing there. But don't do it over the vacation, please. And this is every other
You don't want
administrator,
to be
Sue and
notified?
Kim and everyone else, just take vacation week
You don't have
off.
to notify anyone
Right.
because everyone's
Take
on
a week
vacation.
off.
Okay, all right.
Jess, anything?
I hope
No,
you're all
thank
off
you.
next
Thank
week.
Fiona?
Nothing, thank you.
No, I'm good. Are you going to take time off next week? Is what you need to do.
We are trying.
Good.
Much needed. Yeah,
Ally?
good, thank you.
Sue, Dee?
I just would second what John said, and Kathy, Sue, you need to take the week off, like full blown take the week off. No emails,
Oh, I know.
no calls, no nothing.
Hear from us?
Ellie can fix that, the no email thing.
Ellie's plotting.
I'm good, thank you.
So weird.
Marissa?
Sue? Thank you so much. We really do appreciate your support. And I do have a phenomenal team. I feel truly blessed. And a very efficient meeting. Ms. Honor.
Sue?
No, thank you to everybody for your support and your indulgence as we share everything we're so proud of.
Yeah.
There's a lot to celebrate.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And I also want to say thank you, you guys, and you do need time off, and we do too.
Yes.
Motion to adjourn,
So move.
Second.
adjourn at 7:44.
Woo.
Okay.